How about those Habs? They aren't going to make the playoffs again this season, but they pounded the Florida Panthers Tuesday night at the Bell Center and continue to play some impressive hockey against the best teams in the NHL. We'll talk about that and much more this week on Hockey Inside Out. Welcome to this week's Hockey Inside Out show. I'm Stu Cowan of the Gazette, and I'm joined this week by former Canadiens defenseman and assistant coach Rick Green, and our hockey analytics guru, Andrew Berkshire. Unfortunately, Chris Nyland couldn't make it this week, but we expect to have him back on the show next week. Okay, let's get started. All but one of the Canadiens' remaining 8 games are against teams either battling for playoff seeding or scrambling for a wildcard spot. Do players revel in the chance to play spoiler in these situations? Rick, you've been there. You've been a player. What's the situation for a team like the Canadiens right now?
Well, what they've done most of the year, they've shown up and played with pride and determination. But the reality is, when you got teams that are fighting like crazy, when you look at Detroit twice, Islanders, Rangers, Toronto, Tampa, all these guys are looking to solidify a spot. So they are going to be at their very best. The challenge for the Habs are, can they really dig down deep and find a way to perform? I don't see why they won't, because they've shown it obviously in the past. But they've got their work cut out for them. Yeah, they maybe like to be the spoilers, but the reality is those games mean a lot more to the other teams, and they're going to be playing in a big-time desperate mode versus the Canadiens. I think they're going to obviously try their best, but I don't know whether they're going to make the sacrifices needed to be real spoilers when they're up against that kind of stiff competition and desperation coming from the teams fighting for a spot.
Yeah, they've been really good. I've been surprised at how strong they finished the season post All-Star break. They actually, with the win over Florida, are ahead of where they finished last season in terms of points. They're up to 70 points this year after just 68 last year. I think we all expected a bit of progression, but the progression from the young players has been bigger than I think we could have expected, what would be reasonable to expect, especially from guys like Uri Slafkovsky, guys like Nick Suzuki, who's having like a Selke contender season. This team plays hard for each other. You look at the St. Louis quotes after every game, and it's almost Ted Lasso like. He's almost like inspiring me. He says stuff like, "Man, I wish I had this guy when I was a teenager or early 20s, going to college and stuff, like getting me going every morning." I think it's a great environment for these guys, and I know there's a lot of people who want the tank and want the high pick, but the nice thing where the Canadiens are situated is there's not really far that they can go up or down depending on the rest of the season here. So you can kind of sit back and enjoy it and just see what they do, what they can actually accomplish, because they've put on several big time performances here in the last third of the season, I guess you could say. And it's fun to watch. They are flat out fun to watch right now.
I know we've started calling them Marty-isms. Someone sits in most of his news conference. He comes up, seems with at least one every news conference. And, Tuesday morning, he was talking about how, they need to build a house. You need to build the foundation of your house. And it's the young guys that are building it. And it's up to them to build it well because, 5 years down the line, they don't want to be sitting in the house and saying, this is a crappy house, right? So it's but it's as you said, Andrew, I think Marty, the way he is, the way he speaks, the way he handles players is what keeps these guys as motivated as they are. I know the thing that impressed me most against Florida, the compete level that we've seen all season, but after that cheap shot on Jake Evans by Nick Cousins, who else? The way they rallied all together. Rick, as a former player coach, what do you think when you see that?
Well, it shows you how closely knit they are and how they really do care about what's going on the ice and off the ice. And a number of times, a lot of people have spoken about their chemistry and the type of guys that they want to have around, and they seem to respond in a really good way, and knowing that they really care for each other. So that's huge, and that's a statement in itself. And they're not wavering from that point for most of the year. And the opposition sits up and takes notice. Hey, these guys are not pushovers. They care. They're going to show up. And the interesting time of this year is there's no pressure on the Canadiens right now. They can go out and they can play freewheeling. They can do whatever they want. It's not going to be a huge difference as far as what management thinks. I believe at this point, just go play, go have fun. The pressure's on all the other teams. They have to get it done. Canadians, they're just going to try and do their best, have some fun at it, and see how well they can finish the rest of the season.
Andrew, would you?
That's a great point, Rick. Sorry, Stu, but I think we've seen similar with other rebuilding teams in the past, right? Where you get to that point in the season where it's very clear you're not going to make the playoffs, and maybe the pressure comes off a little bit. The Ottawa Senators, for example, it seems like it's 2 or 3 years in a row they've had this second half of the season where they've surged, and everyone looks at them and says, "Hey, look, this team's going to be great next year." Do we need to dial back a little bit with the Canadiens because they're in that situation?
Well, you look at the Buffalo Sabres, right? I think it's 12 years in a row now they're going to miss the playoffs. That losing atmosphere when it gets in there, I think it's hard to get out of a locker room. You sort of accept losing. I mean, that the Tank fans are like thinking, "Oh, this is ridiculous," or winning these games is going to hurt their pick. But I think it's going to help them more moving forward when you got a bunch of guys in the locker room who don't want to lose. I was talking with Jordan Harris about this a little while ago and all the goal games they have, and I asked him what it's saying. He says, "Well, we hate losing." He says, "Nothing sucks more than losing," and that's I think a good thing to have in the locker room that they have now. And the other thing that impressed me about the game against Florida is another strong, solid performance by Samuel Montembeault. He's showing that he can be a number one goalie in the NHL. And Caden Primo, Molson Cup winner, it used to be the Carey Price Award. Remember, Carey Price would win the Molson Cup every single month. And so I think that speaks volumes for Caden Primo. And it's one of those sort of silly type of awards, but I think that can give him a confidence boost also. When we're talking about Marty St. Louis talking about building the house and the foundation. Well, literally the biggest piece of that foundation is going to be the 240-pound Uri Slafkovsky. Rick, what's impressed you most about him with the way he's been playing recently?
I mean, I like the way he played before. I love what he's doing right now. He's such a big, powerful guy that skating well, he's shooting the puck. He doesn't seem intimidated on what he wants to do out there. So he's showing great poise, and his maturity has increased tenfold as far as, knowing and understanding what kind of game he needs to play at this level. And he's a guy to be reckoned with. If you see him going in the corner now, one-on-one battles, he is a lot of times coming out with a win on that. And he's got tremendous skills that he's just starting to understand that he has to play a certain way, and he has found his way. And you can see it in his demeanor because he's smiling, he's happy, he knows that he's getting results. So, his position at this point is nothing but feeling really good about himself individually and about, just being a part of this mix and being able to contribute in such a positive way that he's doing each time that he gets a chance to play. And wow, I'm really happy for the kid because I know there was a lot of pressure on him. He felt it. You could see it in it. And here's a young kid that has adapted very well. And, hindsight is they made a good decision on the patience level that they've shown and put him in a situation to succeed. And he's responded in such a positive way that allows him to be a great player and going to be even better in the future.
Yeah, you could tell that his reputation within the locker room has grown a lot too. Not that he was ever a problem or anything, but St. Louis spoke about him last night and said that, I think he referred to him not quite as selfless, but he said that he's not a player who thinks only of themselves. He was saying that he's always thinking of their teammates and facilitating plays. And for a first overall pick at, he just turned 20, to already have that is special. That attitude, you can see all these reasons especially in the second half of this season, why the Canadiens made this draft pick. It's the handling of the pressure of the market, how funny he is on the ice and off the ice with media. He seems to understand that it's not just like it's all awesome. It's a lot about what's on the ice, but it's also about off the ice too, right? And handling yourself in a professional way, in a way that connects with the fan base. It's so interesting to see the change in dynamic for Slafkovsky from the first, I think it was like 68 games. He had 17 points in the NHL. He was tied for 537th in the NHL in offense over those first 68 games. Now he's up to 82nd in the 45 games since with 35 points. And it still feels like we're just scratching the surface. That's 82nd is a top line player. It's a lower level top line player, but there's 96 top line players in the NHL. So he's in that category already at 20 years old with a really bumpy start in the NHL. It's really, really impressive. The head he has on his shoulders must be very, very strong.
And he's a fun kid to be around. You're right. His sense of humor, his teammates love him. He's a funny kid. He takes himself seriously, but not too seriously. Like he's able to. I was talking with Jake Evans this week about it, and I was asking Jake Evans, a 7th round pick, can you even imagine what the pressure would be like as a number 1 overall pick in Montreal? He says, I don't even want to think about it. That's scary to even think about it. But he also mentioned that he thought the outside noise got to Slafkovsky a little bit last season. He says he thinks he let it bother him a bit. And this season, he's been able to sort of wipe that out and not listen to what everybody else is saying, just paying attention to what his coaches are saying. I know for me, that physically in front of the net with Ekblad against Florida, I mean, that's a big man. Ekblad took him down, and then Slafkovsky just sort of flipped them over. And it was like, wow. And in front of the net, the physical presence he has. But the other thing that's really impressed me is in his own zone, right? Rick, early in the season, he looked lost. Like, puck would come, the defenseman would pinch in on him, he'd lose it. He just looks so much more confident and takes that extra second to take a look and make smart plays in his own end. And I'm sure Rick, as a defenseman, you notice that when you see a forward improving that way.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a normal type of progression, if you will, when a young kid comes in a new North American game, if you will, and the kid was somewhat intimidated and was not able to handle the pressures that come playing in the NHL. And, I think that the management is probably smiling as much as Slafkovsky is, knowing that they probably made the right decision. I think they made the right decision in the selection, and the way that they've handled him and allowed him to progress the way he has is, a feather in their cap from how they handle their young guys. But there's a lot to be said about, character. They like to develop and have character in the dressing room. And there's a kid that there's no guarantee, obviously, on the first pick, but they like the ingredients that they felt that this kid had. Took a little bit of time, and he's shown that he's well deserving of everything that he's getting in his development as a really good player.
And after the Canadiens drafted him, Kent Hughes spoke about how it wasn't just his on-ice talents. Like, they looked at him, does he mentally have the capacity to deal with everything that comes with the spotlight of playing in Montreal? And he's certainly shown that he does. And I know after Nick Suzuki got his 30th goal, he was asked, do you see Slafkovsky in the future as a 30-goal scorer? And he said, yeah, no problem. He's going to be a 30-goal scorer.
It's a good thing to hear about yourself, I'm sure, right? From somebody who's just done it in Nick Suzuki. One thing that impresses me about Slafkovsky is, we talk about that adjustment to time and space, right? And I'm sure that everyone who hasn't made it anywhere close to professional hockey, growing up in Canada, you're playing street hockey with your friends or whatever. And then, somebody joins from around the block who's on like a rep team or, junior B even. And all of a sudden your time and space goes out the door. So going from the big rink to the small rink and to the NHL where time and space is like, I can't imagine how fast it is, to deal with that. So not just learning about how much space you have, but learning to create it yourself, right? And Slafkovsky's learned to do that with his body and with his playmaking, with his ability to handle and move the puck. It's really a change so quickly, almost overnight in the middle of the season there, that it's just, I've never seen anything quite like it for a young player.
No, he's realizing how strong he is right now, too. It's like he's finally realized, man, I am that big and I am that strong. And Nick Suzuki was speaking about it after the game against Florida, saying after they drafted him and Slafkovsky came to Montreal and he was working out in the gym, and Suzuki was looking at him going, man, this kid's 18. He's a big boy, and we're watching him develop into a man right in front of our eyes. Jake Evans scored a beautiful shorthanded goal Tuesday night against the Florida Panthers. His 5th goal since the Sean Monahan trade, was actually one more than Cole Caulfield scored during that same span. Jake Evans is not counted on for goals. He has 1 season left on his contract with a $1.7 million salary cap hit. He's 27 years old. Andrew, does he have a future with this team beyond that?
I coming into this season, I thought this needs to be a big year for Jake Evans because there's players coming, right? Owen Beck looks close to NHL already. He's having a dynamite season in the OHL. So it's put up or shut up time for Jake Evans, and he's been put in situations over and over again where he shouldn't be able to succeed with, line mates that aren't necessarily great. He's consistently given his all this season. There have been times where the scoring is a struggle for him. He hasn't been able to hit the heights that he hit 2 years ago with 13 goals, but he's close to his career high in points. His playmaking has been very strong. His penalty killing has been very strong. Still a good defensive player. I think in terms of the future for the Canadiens, there could be a fit for Jake Evans, but it's going to have to be at the right price point because this is a team, the way that they're structured, they're going to have 3 pretty good scoring lines to be a competitive team, which means you're not going to want to spend a lot of money on your fourth line. And that's probably where Jake Evans fits long term. I don't even know if his current contract is a long-term fit unless the cap goes up significantly more than we expect it to over the next few years. But from this season alone, I would say he's probably earned another contract if he can replicate it. I really like the player. I think that over the last couple of years, there have been a lot of games where the team needed a push to get engaged, and it's been Jake Evans that has given that push. But it's tough. He's the kind of player that is a luxury, right? And I don't know if it's a long-term fit. I kind of hope it is because I like the player.
I think he's made great improvements from the midway point of the season, and he was topping a conversation as far as what can he do? Can he contribute? Can he do this? Can he do that? And I think he's responded in a really good way. Obviously, in the face-off circle and the penalty killing, and for that price, for what you get with him and the type of character that he has, I think is one of the guys that Martin St. Louis likes. And he's been given opportunity to play in different situations and has responded in a very good way. So that being said, I think that there is room for continued, contract with the Canadiens with him. I like what he's doing. I think he's well liked, and he has all the tools to fill his role as a fourth liner, really, in the future. And like I said, character is important. Good character kid, and now he's showing that he can do a lot of the details of the game better than he did at the start of the year. So, congrats to him and continued success.
The thing that's funny about Jake Evans is he doesn't score that many goals, but all the goals he scores are like highlight reel goals. Against Florida too, shorthanded breakaway and picks the corner, fires it in. He's really improved his faceoffs. I think having Sean Monahan around really helped them with that. And the Canadiens' PK is over 90% for the last 16 games, and it's Jake Evans and Joel Armia, those two guys. I mean, Joel Armia, another guy, picked up his game. That PK has been outstanding. Plus David Savard back there blocking shots. Christian Dvorak was supposed to be done for the season when he had surgery for torn pectoral muscle in January. He has been practicing now with a with a full contact jersey on, and looks like he's going to play again before the end of the season. I don't know, Rick, does that make sense to bring him back?
Well, thanks for bringing his name out because I have completely forgotten about him. And now that you mention him, I don't know why they're bringing him back at this point of the season. If he is, not 100%, I'm going to assume that in order for him to get the green light, they're going to say, yeah, you're good to go. But, I don't know what the future holds for him. And you like to have a healthy body if he does play the games, you want to keep him healthy and hopefully do some great things in the last stretch here. But I don't really understand the reasoning behind it. If there's some question marks whether or not he's 100%. But all right, listen, we'll see what happens, and hopefully for him and the team, he steps in there and makes a difference, and brings some good stuff to the hockey club, and then they'll deal with what his future looks like from that point.
Yeah, on the face of it, it's a weird one because there's so few games left. But then I try to put myself in the shoes of Christian Dvorak and how bad the last few seasons have gone for him. I think I'd want to play, as much as you possibly can. See if you can change the narrative a little bit. If you can have a little like scoring streak at the end of the season here, come back feeling a little bit healthy, chip in some goals while the team's playing well. That maybe would push you into the summer in a more positive attitude. Cause I can't imagine with the way things have gone with injuries and the lack of offensive production and even defensively, he's really fallen apart in Montreal. He can't be that happy with how things have gone for him, right? He's still a player who has pride. I hope. I would want to play. I'd want to get a chance to get in while the getting's good here, while they're winning a few games, and see if I can contribute, change my own focus, right? So it makes sense to me from that perspective, even if it might not from like a overall team perspective. But at the same time, Colin White has not been earning his spot in the lineup, we'll say. So if Christian Dvorak can come back and put some reps in at center, it's probably an improvement for the club as well.
Yeah, Colin White's bringing back some bad memories of Dwight King for me. Yeah, the thing with Dvorak, I mean, I think Kent Hughes wants him to play because I think Dvorak is a player in a contract Kent Hughes would love to be able to move. And it's hard to move a guy when he hasn't played in months and months. So if he comes back and he plays and he's healthy, it might make it possible, although it's unlikely that Kent Hughes might be able to move him on. I mean, two guys that I don't think Kent Hughes will be able to move on because of their contract situations, Brendan Gallagher and Josh Anderson. How do they fit in on this team next season, Rick?
Well, I think it's fair to say we know what Gallagher's all about, and he continues to do what he does each and every shift, each and every game. Much more of an impact on the team than Josh Anderson at this point. I know Josh had a pretty good chance to score. He cannot find a way to score. But his overall game in Josh Anderson struggles both offensively and defensively. And right now, I mean, with that kind of contract, it's a tough one to swallow. But they're going to have to find a way to get his act going so that he can be the player that they hoped he would be. But right now, Gallagher, I don't know what his feeling is on the future as the Mother Nature starts ticking and the age starts to creep up there. Whether or not he wants to get involved with a team that really has a chance to win sooner than later. Talking about a cup, but more room for Gallagher. I have a real hard time with Josh Anderson and where he's at right now, and I don't know what they're going to do with him, but they're going to have to find a way to get him back to playing the way they expected him to play.
Yeah, I'm with you, Rick. I'm not worried about Brendan Gallagher. I think he still does a lot of good things on the ice, even if the finishing has disappeared. If he's an 8% shooter the rest of his career, well, overall he's only a 9.6% shooter. So how much of that is lost? It's really the power play production that's disappeared with not being on the top unit. And frankly, he doesn't play with the caliber of players that he used to play with. We know that he can give you 12 to 14 good minutes in, every game, or at least most games. He can drive opponents crazy. The big thing with him, I think, is make sure that he doesn't get so frustrated that he takes dumb penalties. Because I think that's been kind of the issue the last couple of years here is he wants to do so much more for the team that he gets frustrated and does stuff that maybe isn't a normal Brendan Gallagher play, like that suspension earlier in the year. That's something we've never seen from Brendan Gallagher. He's a tenacious player, but very rarely actually dirty, right? He stays on the line pretty well. So I'm not worried about him. Josh Anderson, I think the problem I have with Anderson is I fully expect him to be able to score 20 goals again. He has the talent to do that, but he consistently sinks lines. And when the team's trying to build towards something, I don't think they can afford any, like next season, I don't think they can afford putting Josh Anderson with Kirby Dach to start the season. Dach's coming off of missing a full year. He needs to be put in a situation to find success, and Anderson just doesn't do that for his lines. He's not a player who like helps connect plays. He kind of just does his own thing, and that results in some good goals. But overall, he doesn't contribute that much in terms of goals or defense to his line mates. And that's why that contract, I think, is just a stinger for Kent Hughes to deal with over the next couple of years.
Yeah, it's hard to figure out what's happened to Josh Anderson. He looks like he's checked out. I mean, that first goal by the Panthers, he just let the guy skate right past them and watched him go in and score. I mean, Brendan Gallagher is a guy who's never going to check out, right? No matter as Marty St. Louis said, he's a guy who brings other guys into the fight. And we saw that against Florida after the late hit on Jake Evans. Who was the guy right in the middle of the scrap? Brendan Gallagher. I asked Marty St. Louis after the game, were you surprised by that? And he sort of laughed and he said, of course not. Brendan Gallagher moving forward will be an overpaid player. He was an underpaid player when he was a 30 goal scorer, but the effort level's always going to be there. And I think you need that. You need a veteran guy like that on a young rebuilding team. As you were talking earlier about building a foundation for the house, I think Brendan Gallagher is still part of that foundation. Well, that's it for this week's Hockey Inside Out show. Please make sure you like and subscribe to the Hockey Inside Out YouTube channel. Go to the MontrealGazette.com/newsletters to sign up for the Hockey Inside Out newsletter. And of course, go to HockeyInsideOut.com every day for all the latest Canadiens news. We'll see you next week.